I don't know how I read all of these books in a month. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Phoebe and today I am here with my March wrap up. Somehow in March, despite the fact that I started a full-time job after not having worked for 3 months, I read 17 books. No idea how I did that. Genuinely don't even know what to tell you. But I've managed to read 17 books. I never usually read anywhere near that. Usually 10 books is a good month for me. So I don't know how I've managed to read 17, but I have and I'm very pleased. It's a lot of books that I've managed to get off my physical TBR, which is lovely. So without any further ado, let's get into my March wrap up. The first book I read in March was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This and the next 2 books I read in a reading vlog as well as a couple later in the month. It was reading books out of my comfort zone. I will leave it linked down below if you haven't watched it and you are interested. This is out of my comfort zone because it's a paranormal romance. It's about a vampire and a werewolf, and basically they have to have an arranged marriage because the political situation in their world is very strained because the vampires and the werewolves and the humans all live close together but they do not get on. So basically this is their way of forming some kind of still very strained alliance between the vampires and the werewolves. I have read a few paranormal books before. Usually I don't love them. I don't think I've ever read a paranormal book that I've really liked, let alone loved, to be honest. It doesn't tend to be for me. But this was a 5-star read. I don't know what Miss Ali Hazelwood does in her books, but this was a 5-star read and I adored it, and it's made me rethink my entire stance on paranormal romance because this was just incredible. It was such a comforting book, which feels weird to say because it's about vampires and werewolves, but it just felt so comforting to me. It's just one of those books that, I don't know, I just can't stop thinking about it. I read it obviously right at the beginning of the month, and still now, I'm filming this on the 1st of April, I still think about this book pretty much every day. Like, it's just obsessed, completely obsessed. The next book I read, again for that same reading vlog, was The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This had a very promising start. I won't go into it too much because I don't want to repeat myself if you have or if you want to watch that reading vlog. But it had a very promising start, a great premise, this competition with all these smart people, and it ended up falling very flat, and I gave this 2.5 stars. There was a lot of talk and not very much doing of anything interesting for me in this book. So yeah, unfortunately fell flat. Beautiful cover, but the story just fell flat, and yeah, I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. Again, the next one I read for that same reading vlog, and it is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I think this is a very good read. I think the nuanced discussion on race was definitely very interesting. We basically get to see the lives of these 2 sisters who end up living they are twins, and they end up living very, very different lives because one of them lives, they are both black. One of them lives as a black woman and one of them lives as a white woman in their adulthood. And we get to see the kind of subtle and also not at all subtle differences between their lives. Despite the fact that they're twins, we get to see the difference in their lives because of people's perception of their race, which was really interesting. This definitely isn't like a manual for white people to learn about race. It is a very, you kind of have to look into it to get the messages out of it, if that makes sense. But I think that's the point. As I said, it's not supposed to be a manual to learn about race. It's just a story about 2 sisters and their daughters and a few other characters as well. The only reason I gave this 3 stars and not any higher is because whilst I think the race discussion was done well, there were other topics in here that I think were glossed over and were kind of idealised a little bit when, especially in the time that this was written, those things would not have been idealised. Again, I talk about it more in the vlog if you are interested. But definitely a good book. If it's been on your radar, I would still recommend it. The next one did not fall flat, and this is Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. What did I even rate this? I can't remember. Let me check on Goodreads. 4.25. I knew it was somewhere around the 4-star mark. I couldn't remember exactly. 4.25, and I think that is still fitting now at the end of the month. If you don't know, this is a 3rd book in the Knock 'Em Out trilogy, and this is Lucian and Sloane's story. I'm actually glad that I waited until now to read this because when it first came out, a lot of people were very disappointed by this, and I get why, because it is about Lucian and Sloane's romance, but it's also just a lot about Lucian and Sloane's lives separately and together, and it's not always kind of connected to their romance. But I knew that going in because everyone else had spoke about it, and I actually ended up really enjoying those other aspects of the story because I already knew that they were kind of going to happen. The only reason, again, this wasn't higher than a 4.25 is I just think after so many years of so much bitterness and hatred, I feel like they just kind of accepted that they were in love with each other. I don't want to say quickly because it doesn't happen early in the book, but just it kind of went from physical attraction to, oh, we're in love with each other and that's fine, even though we hated each other 3 days ago. It wasn't, I don't know how to explain it because it wasn't insta love. It's just I would have liked a bit more internal, like, oh my god, I love him, I love her. Do you know what I mean? Just a bit more kind of internal debate and inner turmoil about the fact that they had feelings for someone that they hated for so long, or hated for so long. But I still really love this. I love the Knock 'Em Out trilogy. Is it cringy? Yes. Do the grown men often act like literal 8-year-olds? Absolutely they do. They fight over nothing. But there's just something about this trilogy and this kind of small town and the characters that I just find quite charming. The second one is my favourite, and then I'd probably say this one and then the first one. Oh, and I also did read this in a reading vlog if you're interested. It was my continuing series reading vlog. The next one I also read for that continuing series reading vlog, and this is Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the 4th book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, but the first from Rose and Connor's point of view. I was so excited for this. I was so excited to finally be in Rose and Connor's heads because I like Lily and Lo, but I don't love Lily and Lo. I don't love how Lily is being portrayed as younger and younger as the series goes on, but anyway, that's besides the point. So I was excited to get into the heads of some different characters and still be in that same kind of world, just in other people's heads for a change. And I ended up really not liking this. I still love Rose. I still love Connor as a character, but I found being in Connor's head very insufferable, which I didn't think I would, but it's just, I just found it insufferable. Like, we get it, you're smart, you don't need to tell us every 2 minutes. Like, we've known, this is the 4th book now, we know you're very intelligent, you don't need to tell us every 2 minutes. And again, I still love him as a character, I'm still excited to see him in the other books. I just didn't enjoy being in his head as much as I kind of thought I would, but I still love Rose. I really loved Rose's point of views. I like the general story of this. I just kind of wish I didn't have to be in Connor's head, even though I still love him as a character. I just didn't enjoy being in his head. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I was debating between 2 and 3, but I think I am going to stick with a 3 because I did, as I said, enjoy the story. I liked Rose's point of view. It was just Connor's that I didn't love. The next 2 books I read were going back to that books out of my comfort zone reading vlog. I had a little break from it. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I can't remember how far in I got. I think I got over 100 pages in and then I DNF'd. Because where do I even start with why I DNF'd this? I'm just going to do a quick summary because I've already laboured the point in the reading vlog and I don't want to bore anyone that has watched that vlog or wants to watch it. It was boring, the main character was insufferable, and when we weren't in the main character's head, it was like reading a textbook. And I think it tells you a lot that I preferred the textbook bits to being in the boy's head because he was so annoying and so insufferable. My also other main problem for this is that one of the side characters uses a homophobic slur, the F word. Fair enough, the main character doesn't like the character who uses the slur, but he doesn't like him because he's a homophobe. He dislikes him because he doesn't know enough about 80s movies. So he's just used a homophobic slur, but the only thing bad you've got to say about him in your head is that he doesn't know enough about the 80s. Sorry, what? No criticism of the homophobia then? No, okay. And I carried on reading thinking like, is this going to get brought up? And it doesn't. And then we got introduced to the main female character who is known for being very smart, very successful, very good at this kind of game challenge thing that the book is centred around. And the first thing that the main character says about the only main female character is, well, she's so hot. Not, oh, it's so fun to meet her because she's so smart. Not, oh my god, I've admired her for so long. Just that she's good looking. It's a no from me. No thank you, Ernest. Next one, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a bit of a weird one. I rated this 3 stars. And I think it's just because I'm learning Dark Academia is not for me. The Atlas 6, this, The Secret History, I just didn't love any of them. However, I think the Atlas 6 and The Secret History are objectively a bit boring. I'm sorry, if you love those books, I love that for you. You're obviously smarter than me. That is absolutely fine. To me, they're boring. This wasn't boring. It's just I've learnt that it's not for me. If you are looking for a very dark, gruesome, like bloody, murdery Dark Academia, I think this is very good. I absolutely understand why people read this and rate it 5 stars. I get it. It's just not for me, personally. I don't even know how to give you a summary of this. I wouldn't even know where to start, but it's about Alex Stern, who is in a secret society at Yale, and that's all I really know how to say. Please check trigger warnings, there are a lot of them, and they are prominent in the book. It is a dark book, so please check them if you are interested in reading it. But if this is the kind of thing that you are looking for, I would absolutely recommend this. I think it's a very good book. It's just not my kind of thing. I forgot to mention, because I read it as an ebook / audiobook, but I also read The Assassin's Blade and I ended up rating it 3 stars. I loved a couple of the novellas. I feel like reading the reviews, people don't like the desert one. I loved the desert novella. I really enjoyed that one. But the more the story went on, the more flat it fell for me. I think it doesn't help that I read it 4th, which was, at the time, I read Throne of Glass like a year ago. And at the time, people weren't really labouring the fact that you should read Assassin's Blade first yet. And now I wish I had, because it makes so much more sense to read it first. I don't know why people suggest to read it 4th. It didn't make any sense to me to read it there. Not necessarily a reflection of The Assassin's Blade that I gave it 3 stars. I think if I'd have read it first, I probably would have enjoyed it a bit more. But yeah, please, if you haven't read Throne of Glass and you want to, read Assassin's Blade first. I really do think it just makes the most sense. The next book I read was Legends and Lattes. Oh, I love this one. This was so cute, so cozy. If you're in the mood for a slow fantasy where you want to be in a fantasy world, but you don't want like stakes and murder and everything, read this. It's just about an orc. She is an orc, I think, isn't she? I'm sure she is. It doesn't say. She's called Viv anyway, and she's some kind of fantastical creature, and it's just about her opening a coffee shop. And there are things that happen, like there is intrigue in here. It's not literally just her opening a coffee shop and nothing happens. But it's, the stakes are like, everything's okay at the end. Do you know what I mean? Like there are small stakes, but everything just is okay. It's just so cozy to read. Yeah, I would absolutely recommend this. And if you are a high stakes fantasy person, I don't think you would like it, because it is just about someone opening a coffee shop. But it is just so cute. I really enjoyed it. And then at the end of here, there's also a novella, a very short novella. And the second book in this series is actually a prequel, Bookshops and Bonedust. I haven't read it yet. I do want to read it in the next couple of months. Basically, the main character of this book, who was opening the coffee shop, she used to like fight for a living. I don't really know what she did. She like kind of an assassin-ish, but like not quite, but that kind of vibe. And the novella is kind of a bridge between the two. So the novella at the end of this book is just before this book begins, if that makes sense, because you kind of read the series backwards in publication order. And it was very cute. It was a nice bridge. It made me want to read the prequel. So again, I am going to do that in the next couple of months. But yeah, what did I rate this? I've been talking about it and didn't even say. 4 stars. Maybe it's like a 4.25, because I do still think about this and I did really enjoy it. The cover is also very beautiful, which always helps. The next book I read was another one that I listened to on audio, and it was Underlock by Mariana Zapata. I ended up giving this 3 stars because at one point the male main character like screams at the female main character to like get the F out, like screaming at her, when she's like, yeah, what she's done isn't ideal, but like it's not personal to him, like she's not done anything wrong, she just put herself in a bit of a dangerous situation and he's not happy about it. And then everyone's like, oh, he's screaming at you because he cares. He's screaming because he needs therapy, not because he cares. Like, let's let go of this narrative that he's mean because he likes you. No, he's mean because he needs help. Maybe he could just express his emotions in a healthy way. I'm quite bored of men in books being angry and then everyone being like, it's because he cares. No, it's because he needs to learn emotional regulation. We all get a bit wound up at times, but like he screamed at this woman, telling her to get the F out. No. Other than that, the vibes of the book were good. It's like a motorcycle club romance kind of thing. He owns a tattoo shop, she works in the tattoo shop. He doesn't like her at first at all, they end up falling in love, blah blah blah. It was like an okay book, but yeah, his actions and the way he kind of carried himself was just no thanks, not for me. The next one I read was I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. I started this months ago, put it down, and then ended up picking it back up. And I gave this 3 stars. I think that's the lowest I've ever rated an Alice Oseman book, but this just wasn't for me. It's basically a criticism of like excessive, obsessive fan culture where fans feel like they own celebrities. And I was really excited for that because I think that is definitely something that needs criticising. The lack of privacy that celebrities often have and the kind of invasion of their privacy definitely is something worth discussing. but I don't think it did the best job of that. I feel like, because there's two main characters in here. One of them is in a boy band, and the other point of view is a girl who is a fan of the boy band and she's very obsessed with them. And I feel like by the end she didn't have enough of a redemption arc for me for this to really be a criticism of her behaviour. I feel like she was better at the end, but I don't feel like her behaviour was actually criticised enough for me personally. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars. It was like a quick, easy read, but yeah, I don't think the message came across necessarily as well as maybe the author anticipated it would. The next one was, oh, the stack fell. The next one is yet another book that, guess what, fell a bit flat. Stardaughter. I have owned this for quite a while now. I bought it because it's very pretty. It is a gorgeous book, like stunning. But the actual story, I just don't get it. It was all over the place. So this girl is half human, half star, which sounds fascinating. She's 17, so it's like young adult, but top end of young adult. Tell me why this was written like a middle grade. The characters were so immature and so bratty and so annoying that it got to the point where I couldn't even pay attention to what was going on in the story because I was so wound up by all the characters. I just didn't like most of them. So that was the main reason this fell flat for me. I don't think the characterisation was done very well. I think the characters were written so young that it very much took away from the story for me. So unfortunately, despite how beautiful this is, and I was very excited to read a book that had a lot of Hindu culture in it. I think a lot of fantasies obviously are, even though they're in fantasy worlds, they tend to be like westernised. So I was very excited to read something different, and those elements were very nice, but just the characterisation for me just kind of, I don't want to say ruined the book, that's a bit dramatic, but it definitely took away from the enjoyment of the rest of the book for me. The next few books that I read were for my 24-hour readathon that I uploaded a few days ago. The first one is Practice Makes Perfect. I ended up really enjoying this. I liked When in Rome, but this is in a whole other ballpark. This is about the sister of, the younger sister of the male main character from When in Rome, and the bodyguard of the girl from When in Rome. So both characters that we've seen before. I get why people might not like this as much because Annie is very much like different to the other girls, but it's not in like a pick-me way. She's just genuinely very quiet and very sweet and just kind of different to her sisters. So for me, it didn't annoy me. I was worried at first that it would, but it didn't. They are kind of very extreme, like she's very sweet, he's very bad, but also this is literally a cute little rom-com. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not expecting miracles here, but I still didn't find it annoying. I still found this book very charming, very cute, so quick and easy to read, and I would definitely recommend this one. Even if you didn't love When in Rome, I think this one personally is quite a lot better. The next one was another audiobook that I listened to, and it was Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I ended up giving it 2.5, I think. Yeah, 2.5. I was stuck between 2.5 and 3, but I've settled on 2.5. I think if you're wanting to get into dark romance, this isn't a bad place to start because it is dark, but it's not so dark that it's like going to put me off the genre, because I don't read dark romance, but I am wanting to get into it a bit more. So I think it was a good introduction in that sense. However, the kind of regression of the FMC in this book was insane. By the end, she was a complete wet lettuce, and I get that it's a dark romance and that usually the men are very alpha and they're in charge, blah blah blah, but I think there is just a way to do that without completely just ruining the female main character. Like, we don't need her to have no personality and no backbone at all for him to be like in charge, and I feel like that's what happened in this book. She lost any sense of like herself and any kind of power or anything, literally anything about herself was gone on the floor 6 feet under by the end of the book. And I didn't enjoy that. I really didn't. Even though I knew going in it's a dark romance, again, I just don't think we need to ruin the female main character to make it a dark romance. It still could have been the same story with her still having some smidgen of a backbone by the end of the book. The next one I read, I don't have because it's already in my own haul pile because I can't stand to look at it. It's Strictly on Ice by Helen Buckley. Again, I tried to read that for my 24-hour readathon, as I did with Hooked. And I ended up DNFing it 30 pages in, because the book is very fat phobic. Constant mentions of people's weight in a very negative way, even though it wasn't explicitly saying like it's bad to be fat. Like, it was glaringly obvious to me that the author or the characters or whatever have a problem with anyone that's like over a UK size 6. It was just, again, even though it wasn't blatant, it was blatant. Constant mentions of people's weight, constant criticising of people for letting themselves go because they've got love handles. Like, oh, shut up. Like, shut up. No, not for me. So yeah, I ended up just DNFing that one. I'm never going to enjoy a book that's got those kind of elements in. I'm never going to be able to look past something like that, so I just gave up and ended up DNFing. The next book I finished a couple of days ago, again, ready for the 24-hour readathon. And it's yet another Ali Hazelwood book. When I finished this, I gave it 4.25 because I feel like, if you don't know, I think it's quite obvious, this is a chess romance. He is the #1 chess player in the world. She is amazing at chess but hasn't played in a few years because of something that happened in her past, which you get to find out later in the book. And she, for reasons I won't describe, starts playing chess again and they end up meeting. I do feel like the ending of this fell a tiny bit flat. I just wanted a little bit more emotion at the end because they had like a falling out. There was a third act breakup and I just wanted a bit more of an intense reunion personally after it. But now that I've sat and thought about it, because obviously when you get to the end of the book, you're thinking about the end of the book. But now that I've sat for a couple of days and thought about the book as a whole, even though the ending wasn't exactly what I wanted, I think this is at least a 4.5 because I just, every time I think about this book, I just want to giggle. Like, I loved this book so much. It isn't YA. I don't know why this is marketed as YA because it isn't. It's definitely more like a new adult. So obviously bear that in mind. There are definitely themes in here that I don't think belong in a YA book. They are discussed too explicitly to be in a YA book. But yeah, I adored this. It was so cute. It is very much about chess. It's not just a straight up romance. There's a lot of kind of chess matches and stuff, but I just love that. Even as someone who doesn't have a clue about chess, it's just, I don't know what Miss Ali Hazelwood puts in her books, but I don't like science, and I love all of her STEM romances. I don't typically love novellas, and I loved Loath to Love You, her novella bind-up. I don't like paranormal books, and I loved Bride. And I know nothing about chess, and I adored this. So I don't know what this woman is putting in these books, but clearly I'm eating it up because I adored this. It's definitely at least a 4.5. It gave me 5-star vibes at a lot of points. It was literally just the very ending. So it could even be higher than a 4.5 if I still keep thinking about it, like in the way that I am, like I want to giggle. But we'll see. But for now, it's definitely at least a 4.5. I adored this. And then the last book I finished this month, I finished it last night. The Language of Seabirds by Will Taylor. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was fine. I think maybe I'm just a little bit old for it. I still love YA, but this is very much bottom end YA. I didn't know going into this that these characters are like 13. And like, I don't even think they kiss or anything. I'm pretty sure they don't. Like, it's not inappropriate. It's just they're young. So obviously I'm not connecting on any kind of emotional level or really empathising with the experience of 13-year-olds because I'm 25. I've not been 13 in a while. But I think if you are closer to the age of these characters, it is a good book. It's got great vibes. It's set in the summer on the beach, like in this beach house. It is a lovely book. It's just, for me, it just didn't have any kind of impact. It was just an okay book that didn't really give me anything. But again, I am 25 and I didn't know going into this that the characters were so young. So it was fine. Not a bad book, just, again, maybe not, definitely not aimed at me, a 25-year-old woman. And they are all the books that I read in March. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!